Hello, LBS 400 students. Welcome to your early literacy concepts review videos. As you know by now, this is one of many videos that we are using to review some important concepts in our course and our textbook. We have the A through G series here of foundational skills in literacy, and we have been taking these concepts from our course and our textbook by Cunningham and Allington. Today's video is on concrete words, and Cunningham and Allington talk about how some of the foundational skills students need were in the first one you watched was an understanding of why we read. Video B was background knowledge and vocabulary. C was print concepts. And D was phonemic awareness. Now we're on to that they need to know some concrete words. And for many students, concrete words could be words that are important to them. So it might be their name or their favorite food, things like that. But we're going to get a little deeper into that idea here. I'm going to share my screen with you. There we go. So, as I mentioned, concrete words are often things that students are really comfortable with, like their name or their favorite foods or places or people they know. They start to learn those words pretty easily, and maybe even the spelling and specific pronunciation of it. They might recognize it when they see it written, especially their favorite place to eat or their favorite place to go or their favorite TV show or movie, things like that that they like. But in school, we want to also build up their sight words. And so this is another set of concrete words that students need to know. And sight words are something you probably see in a lot of primary classrooms. And here at the top right is an example of what you might see in a classroom. There's an alphabet, and then there's a list of these sight words. And they're called sight words because students should be able to recognize them on sight, meaning that they memorize them. They do not need to sound them out. After a while, they've just learned them. And that is particularly important for the ones that are hard to sound out, such as like right here, we see in the Ks, we have a lot of these silent K words like no, the difficult combination of consonants like little. There's a range of different words that it's really important because they're going to see it a lot, and it's important that they just memorize it early on because we don't want them to have to spend the time sounding it out after a while. And the main reason for that is that they are usually based off of lists of the most common words in the English language. These two lists that we often pull from in schools is the Dolch list or the Fry list. The Dolch list is a longer set, and it was the first one to come out many years ago. Dolch was a researcher that studied all the most common words and decided that these were the ones that students should really learn early on to make their transition into fluent reading really progressive and fast. And so what he's done here is divide them into grade levels, right? So we have the pre-K list listed here that you can see in green, but there's one for every grade level for the Dolch list. So you'll see those a lot in school. They're alphabetized, and so what they've done is taken some of the most common A words and listed them here, common B words, common C, and every grade level has new ones, and they get a little more complex as you go. Although I think some of these are pretty tough for pre-K. So you'll see that these are definitely words you want to teach explicitly, very carefully and explicitly, and maybe even just help students memorize the way they look so that when they see it, they know it. They don't have to sound it out. Of course, they're going to sound it out in the beginning, as you learned in the phonics video, and you're going to learn in future videos a little bit more about that. But it's important that they can just recognize them early on. The other list, which is also very common, is a little newer, more updated, is the Fry list. Some people even have a combination, the Dolch and Fry list, that they put them together. The Fry list is just the most common words in the English language. It goes all the way up to 1,000. I have a picture here of the first 100 words that are often used, especially in primary. So if you look at these, obviously these first ones are simple words that students should recognize pretty early on. By the time it gets to 100, they are a little hard, but you can see these are words that kids will see all the time. And so the reason that we want kids to recognize these by sight is because they're the most common words. In fact, the first 100 words of the Fry list make up 50% of everything an adult will ever read in the English language. So if you imagine that if I go back and look at this first 100 words, if a student can fluently, quickly read these easily as they're looking at any text, imagine if that's more than half of what they read, how much easier they're going to have in that process of learning to read more complex text, right? That process is going to be much more simple for them, and it's going to go smoother. So the reason we practice these sight words is because we want them to build fluency and we want them to build prosody. So fluency is speed and accuracy, so that I'm reading at a fast pace, not going one word at a time. And also prosody, which is expressiveness, reading in a natural voice and tone with inflection and knowing when to pause and what to emphasize. That's expressiveness, and that is helpful for students so that they can gain meaning from what they're reading and not read like a robot, right? You hear a lot of kids that sound like that when they read. So learning these sight words that we've shown here, either the Dolch list or the Fry list or some combination thereof, is really important for developing that fluency and prosody that's so important for early readers. If students are struggling to sound out those basic words in the very beginning of their reading journey, then they're really going to struggle with trying to make meaning. As you saw in one of the previous videos, we had a second grader who was able to decode almost all of the text in the book that he had selected. And because he was able to fluently read through that, he might have been struggling a little with some prosody, but he had a pretty fluent set of reading with his sight words. That helped him think and reflect on the meaning of that text. If kids are stuck on each little word and they're having to sound out all these simple words like of, and, a, the, to, that's going to slow them down a lot. So sight words at an early age is very, very important. So what I'd like you to do now is you're going to watch an example of a teacher explaining some of the activities that she uses to teach sight words. These are some great examples. There are lots of good examples out there, so don't feel like you have to use hers when you become a teacher, but I'd like you to watch this just to get an idea of some of the things that teachers do that are effective. Go ahead and pause this and watch this teacher's set of examples. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you had some time to watch that video and get some good ideas from that teacher. Here's a little tip for you. There is a file on Blackboard called SuperSpeed, and it's a PowerPoint that is based off of the Dolch and Fry list, and it's kind of a combination thereof, and it's the most common words in the English language, so it goes all the way up to 1,000. And I think it's a fun activity. You could use it in pairs. You could use it as a whole class reading aloud. I used to use it even with my reading intervention classes. And so check out that file if you want to see an example of a fun activity you could do for sight words. All right, finally, we're going to go back to Blackboard and we're going to click in the assignments folder. We're going to go into the early literacy folder from there, and then we're going to find the forum titled Early Literacy Concepts E. Here is your prompt. Sight words can be a simple memorization exercise. Describe a sight word activity you would like to use in your classroom. You may search online or refer to strategies you have seen in our class materials, your text, or classroom observations. So you saw some examples in this video when you looked at the teacher giving her strategies. You have seen an example with SuperSpeed. You could probably look up how people use that or similar activities. I want you to just do some searching on your own, go through our text or go through other materials and think back to what you've seen that you think works well. We want to be really creative with sight words because memorizing words off of a list can be pretty boring. So we want to make reading fun. It has to be in context and it has to be fun. So what would you do? Feel free to be creative on this and think of your own ideas or do some searching and add some great concepts onto the Blackboard post. You have 3 points for a well-constructed post, 1 point for each reply, as usual, for a total of 5. Thank you for all your hard work, and we'll see you in the next video.